Growing for Market podcast.
So if I were to start over again, and what I often advise people is that you're going to save yourself a lot of headache and hassle if you can find land that already is developed as farmland. If there's already a barn, a house, so on and so forth, the price tag might look higher, but it actually is less over the long term. And there are some resources you can get, especially now that we have Black Farmer Fund and we have Pot Liquor Capital, that can help you get off the ground. And I also really recommend that folks look into long-term lease options through land trusts and community land trusts, in addition to purchasing outright, because you can get as much security with much less outlay. And more of those opportunities becoming available. So it's not that I regret anything. I just think we definitely picked the hard road. And so I mentioned that because I don't want to set people up for what might feel insurmountable when there are easier paths.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 100th episode of the Growing for Market podcast. We've got a great interview for you today. I wanted to let you know that we had some technical difficulties on our side of things, so our audio is a bit rough, but it gets better as the interview goes on, and it's such a lovely interview. We wanted to make sure and get it to you. So thanks in advance for your understanding, and bear with us. It's worth it.
Hello, and welcome to the Growing for Market podcast, where we talk about growing, marketing, and the business of growing vegetables and flowers for local markets like farmers markets, CSAs, farm stands, and local wholesaling. I'm April Parms Jones, your host and a writer for Growing for Market magazine. For 33 years, the magazine for flower and vegetable market farmers. If you're enjoying the podcast, just wait until you see the magazine. Go to growingformarket.com for more. Also, if you could give us a follow and a rating, it really helps other like-minded people to find the podcast. And now, let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
Hi there, I'm Lindsay Lusher-Shute from Hardy Roots Farm. There are a lot of farm sales platforms out there, but there's only one that's cooperatively owned by farmers. That's Grown By, your all-in-one solution to simplify farm sales. From startup market farms to complex and scaled-up CSAs like mine, Grown By makes online farm sales easy and affordable. Built a beautiful storefront with our dedicated support team who have years of farming experience. They'll be with you every step of the way. Selling on Grown By is truly affordable. Setting up your shop is totally free, and you pay only when you sell. More than half of all platform and credit card processing fees are paid for by Grown By customers, helping farmers keep more cash in their own pockets. Grown By doesn't just make selling food online accessible to farmers. Grown By makes farm food accessible to all. In a partnership with the USDA and MarketLink, Grown By will help you authorize your farm to accept SNAP online for free. Ready to put your best food forward? Join over 900 farms who have already signed up for Grown By. And don't forget, you're eligible to join the co-op and become a member owner after your first sale. Visit grownby.com to get started. That's GROWNBY.com.
Hi, this is Nathan from Tilth Soil. We are a worker-owned co-op in Cleveland, Ohio, making living soils approved for certified organic growing. Our mixes are based on NOP-compliant compost we make from the 4,000 tons of food scraps we keep out of landfills every year. Instead of throwing food in the trash, we respect farmers and the land by putting those scraps back into production as compost. Just like quality vegetable farming, it takes hard work and dedication, but the results speak for themselves. Get excellent germination, strong transplants, and help us feed people, not landfills. Try a free bag and check out our pre-sale for the 25 season at tilthsoil.com. Okay, I'm done. Play the jingle.
I'm in my garden, the sun is shining, my plants are thriving in Tilth Soil.
I don't know about you, but I got into farming to grow food, not to spend my time creating pack lists, writing newsletters, responding to emails, or maintaining web stores. If I could spend less time on my phone and computer and more time farming, that would be a win. Enter Farmhand. Farmhand is the only all-in-one virtual assistant built by and for CSA farmers. It takes care of the admin, managing orders, customer communications, and automating tedious tasks so you can get back to doing what you love. On average, Farmhand saves CSA farmers 6 hours a week. That's 6 hours you could spend with your family, out in the field, or simply taking a breather. So, what would you do with an extra 6 hours? Now's the time to get your systems ready for next season. Learn how Farmhand can help at farmhand.partners/GFM. That's farmhand.partners/GFM.
Hi, everyone. I'm April Parms Jones, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have an immense honor and pleasure of having Leah Penniman. She's like super duper famous, so this is very exciting. And she is a mother, and she is a farmer, and she's a soil nerd and an author, a food justice advocate of Soulfire Farm in Grafton, New York. Founded in 2010. Their mission is to end racism within the food system, to reclaim our ancestral connection to the land, and she has two amazing, fabulous, outstanding books that are out, Farming While Black and Black Earth Wisdom, Soulful Conversations with Black Environmentalists. Leah, thank you so much for being here today.
Of course, April. And it's such an honor to be on your show and to hear about your farming journey. Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, as we dig into it, Farming While Black is a super famous, amazing piece of literature, knowledge, and development for farmers. And personally, as a woman of color farmer, when I was getting into regenerative land practices, I felt that there wasn't a key book that I could just easily read and learn knowledge, information, and next steps for farming. So how did that book come about?
It's so good to hear you say that because I had a similar experience. I started farming when I was a teenager in 1996. And I went to all the organic farming conferences and ag spaces, and I didn't see any Black or brown people presenting anything. I didn't see any books written by. It was rare to even see women actually in leadership or non-binary folks in leadership. And so I started to have doubts about whether I belonged in that space and whether it made sense to farm, if that was somehow a betrayal of my community, if my services were needed elsewhere. And when I met Mama Karen Washington, who's the co-founder of Black Urban Growers and also Rise and Root Farm, is on our board. She's a wonderful Black farmer elder. She was the one who encouraged me to stay the course. And she said, one day we're going to have our books, we're going to have our conferences, we're going to have these things, right? And again, not that it didn't exist. I think in the South, there certainly was a stronghold, but I grew up in the Northeast. It was not there. And so fast forward to starting Soulfire Farm and beginning to train other farmers and quickly realizing that all the curriculum that we put together that focuses very much on the Black agrarian history, that this isn't someone else's history we're borrowing or techniques we're borrowing, but when we make raised beds, that's the Ovambo people. When we make our orchards, we're copying the Jardin Lacou of the Haitian people. So it was so important to realize that curriculum couldn't just go to the people who were able to make it to the farm. We couldn't gatekeep that. So Farming While Black came about to answer that call. You know, Toni Morrison in Blessed Memory, she said, if there is a book you need to read that has not been written, go and write it. So this was the book that my younger self needed and that I knew so many rising generation farmers needed to know their Black farming history, to know these very practical how-to things, like you said. How far apart do you space your carrots? How do you preserve the harvest when you have too much greens at the end of the season? How do you think about land acquisition? How do you remediate lead out of the soil? So all these practical things, as well as the history, and then to demystify our story. You know, it's very sweet at the beginning that you said she's super famous. Just to be very clear to everyone, I mean, we're in a niche little corner of the universe, so maybe Soulfire is well known there, but people don't get into farming for notoriety. People get into farming, often they're introverts and they want to hang out with the earth. So the fact that Soulfire had gotten this kind of aura about it, despite it wasn't what we were aiming for, it felt important to also be really transparent about our struggles, about what it took, that it wasn't just magic, that suddenly here we are and there's these buildings and infrastructure and people, but to really take people through those stages of what it was like to start out with no money and no infrastructure and just our friends coming by, and then to build over time, because I think it makes it feel more possible when you understand that it's not magic, it's determination, it's longevity. We've been on this land since '06, right? So that takes some time.
And I think that is an excellent point that you're bringing up, is that sometimes people look at farming and then you go to like maybe an urban garden. Like I was just in Detroit for the Urban Farmers Conference and I saw Karen there and I was like, hi, how are you? It was really wonderful. And, you go into an urban space, an urban garden, urban farm, and it just looks so wonderful and perfect. And they have all the things that you want to grow. But if you are in the space, it takes time for those apple trees to grow and to produce, and for the berries. And a lot of things take a long time investment. And so it's good to have resources like your book that really explain the breakdown of everything step by step. The one chapters that I really loved were talking about land resources and also finding land. And I think that that's sometimes so missing in the conversation. Like land prices are going up and land access is decreasing. And so, how was your journey with finding land? And then, if you were thinking about it like now, how would it be different?
Oh, it'd be so different. So our journey with finding land. So we were young, we were in our early 20s when we decided to start Soulfire Farm at the behest and encouragement of our local community. And so our criteria were really simple. One, we needed to be close to the Albany, New York community because they're the ones who asked us to grow food for them. So you sort of draw a circle on a map of 45 minutes and there's certain towns. The second thing that we were looking at was affordability, because we didn't have massive amounts of savings. We didn't have grants, and land that is a certain distance from a major city is going to be less expensive. Land in a more depressed economic area is going to be less expensive. And honestly, land that just is not good quality soil. So we're up here in the mountains with very thin soils, very rocky soils, very few town amenities, population 1,200 in our town. And the other thing we were looking for was that we had at least one friend in the town. So there's a Buddhist temple, Nipanzami Hoji Grafton Peace Pagoda, and we're very close with the nun, the elder nun who runs that temple. So when we were looking in Grafton, this particular property we were on was so inexpensive. One, because it was logged, so the tree, it was all damaged and torn up, and also because it was landlocked. They had no frontage. So this is, again, not the path of least resistance. We had to negotiate an easement. We had to run through all kinds of hoops, but we could pay for it. And little did we know in our naivete that the purchase of the land is the smallest step in many ways, because the infrastructure, if you're starting from zero, the electric, the septic, the well, the buildings, the barns, all those things, that's where the real capital comes in. And so we were pretty unprepared for that and had to, it just took us a long time to be able to resource that and to build a lot of things by hand. So if I were to start over again, and what I often advise people is that you're going to save yourself a lot of headache and hassle if you can find land that already is developed as farmland. If there's already a barn, a house, so on and so forth, the price tag might look higher, but it actually is less over the long term. And there are some resources you can get, especially now that we have Black Farmer Fund and we have Pot Liquor Capital, that can help you get off the ground. And I also really recommend that folks look into long-term lease options through land trusts and community land trusts, in addition to purchasing outright, because you can get as much security with much less outlay. And more of those opportunities becoming available. So it's not that I regret anything. I just think we definitely picked the hard road. And so I mentioned that because I don't want to set people up for what might feel insurmountable when there are easier paths.
No, for sure. I mean, I think like you're saying, getting land is so hard. You have to figure out, where do you want to be? How close do you want to be to a major city? And then the land prices, whatever they may be, and trying to negotiate all that. And so it is a hard thing. And I love that you're highlighting using a land trust. I had never thought of that idea. I'd never, I mean, I know of farmers who have utilized that in Ohio, but I don't think it's out there in the common knowledge of farming that also is a good option. And like you're saying, it aligns with the values of they want to keep the land, they want to preserve the land, and you want to do similar things.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, restoring degraded land is another chapter in Farming While Black, which totally spoke to my soul because I'm urban farming in Akron, Ohio. And it's a really industrial city, and we've had a lot of stuff going on in the industrial space. And so that all impacts our land and the quality of our land and the soil. And so I've had to do a lot of deep intensive studying of remediation processes. And what was your story for restoring the land where you are?
Such a great question. Remediation is so important because when we think about what soils we have access to in Black and Brown communities, it's often not the best for various reasons, right? And so we had come from an urban farming background, rural and urban, but in our urban farming background, we worked with leaded soils. And in Worcester, Massachusetts, we were measuring levels of lead as high as 12 to 20,000 ppms, which is super fun site. And this was just in people's drip line or in the community gardens or in the playgrounds. And so learned how to do phytoremediation and also learned how to do landscaping solutions to block off lead away from humans. And this got very personal because our own child was lead impacted while we were living in Worcester. So even though the rural soils did not have lead, a lot of those similar ideas about how do you use building up versus digging down, and also how to use plants to heal, transfer over when your soils are damaged in a different way. And in our case, our soils were just heavily eroded and degraded from mismanagement. So we spent a couple of years composting, cover cropping, grazing chickens through the land. We use no-till strategies where you just keep building up with organic matter instead of digging down. And we're able to, well, I'll tell you this really incredible story. So Tiffany Lachey, who's a Black soil scientist and has been a guest facilitator at Soulfire several times, she came through a couple of years ago to do a soil workshop, and she took a soil core. And for folks who don't know, a soil core is like essentially inserting a metal cylinder into the soil to pull out a column that you can analyze in terms of its health and its history. So it has layers. It has like lines in it that show the history. And so she's brilliant. She was reading the history. She's like, here's where the native folks were using burn management to increase the deer population. Here's the 1800 sheep craze when everyone was doing the sheep, right? So she's like telling us our history through soil. Brilliant. But she gets to the top and she goes, and this foot of topsoil is what you all built in the time that you've been here, in a decade, this 1 foot of topsoil. She's like, and this will stay in the geological record. You will be able to, 1 million years from now, pull down, look at the stone, and you will see like Soulfire was here. And that blew my mind. It blew my mind. I was like, wow, I'd never thought about, we think about 7 generations. We think that's far. Now thinking about having actually your contribution recorded in stone, that's a whole other thing.
Well, the thing, it's there forever. I love that. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think like that's the power of growing and being in a growing space, is that it's hard, it's difficult, it's complex, it's challenging, but also you're able to build for the future. You're able to build a great foundation and really just expand. And we all have to eat every day. And so really being a part of the food system is just, like you said, it's intergenerational.
Ashe.
It's exciting.
Ashe.
Yes. And now let's take a minute to hear from our sponsors. It's with their generous support that we can bring you the podcast for free.
I am so excited to welcome Bootstrap Farmer as a sponsor of the podcast. I've known them for a dozen years, and if anyone tells you nothing is made in the USA anymore, well, they're headquartered and warehoused in Paris, Texas. They make their own all-metal, all-inclusive greenhouse frames of steel made in the USA and fabricated in Texas, and their heavy-duty, reusable propagation and microgreens trays are Midwest-made. With a complete range of supplies, they have just about everything for propagation and growing, including heat mats, ground cover, frost blankets, silage tarps, irrigation, and trellising. Want to color code your seed starting flats? They've got heavy-duty trays that will last for years in a full range of colors. Great for keeping farm seedlings separate from retail or just for fun. And they have an experienced team of growers to support everything they sell. If you've heard of the NRCS High Tunnel Initiative providing grants for hoop houses, but have been put off by the paperwork, Bootstrap Farmer has a guide that will walk you through the application process so you can get your hoop house funded this winter. For all that and more, check out Bootstrap Farmer at bootstrapfarmer.com. If you're looking for something new in vegetables, those novel, high-quality varieties that appeal to today's fresh market shoppers, then it's time to explore Pan American Seed vegetables. Pan American Seed offers vegetable varieties that are specially selected for earlier and longer harvests with loads of flavorful produce to sell, better disease resistance, and plant habits that fit smaller, more versatile growing spaces. To help make your choices for vegetable programs easier, Pan American Seed has grouped its full catalog assortment into 4 categories using easy-to-identify symbols. There's basket bites for trailing vegetables, patio picks for large containers, ground breakers with in-the-ground plant performance, and finally, kitchen minis, which are compact tabletop herbs and veggies for small space growing. Download the latest Pan American Seed vegetables brochure at panamseed.com/vegetables and reach out to your preferred seed supplier to place your order today. Today's episode of the Growing for Market podcast is brought to you by BCS America. On our farm, we've had our BCS 2-wheel tractor for over a decade, and with no belts to slip, its all-gear-driven construction is still going strong. Though we originally got it for rototilling, we kept it even when we went mostly no-till because it can do so many other things around the farm. From snow blowing, to making raised beds with the rotary plow, to chipping wood, it can do just about anything you might need on a farm with the right attachment. Need to shred a cover crop? A BCS flail mower will make quick work of even the most vigorous cover crop and chop it up so it breaks down quickly. Want to stir in compost or amendments without inverting soil layers? A power harrow turns your BCS into a precise tilthing machine with depth control so you don't mix deeper than you want to. With so many attachments to choose from, it truly is the Swiss Army knife of farm implements. It's why, instead of saying 2-wheel tractor, so many people just say BCS. Tractors and attachments are on sale through the end of the year. Visit bcsamerica.com to find sale pricing and your nearest dealer.
And now, back to the show.
So feeding the soil is another chapter that I loved. And it goes directly into, like, when your soil is degraded, you have to kind of analyze it, see what's going on, study it, research it, work on it, but then you also have to feed the soil. And it always needs different things at different times of the year or through the years, and you always have to modify. And so what have you found that's been really successful for you looking at feeding your soil?
Well, I'll tell you something really fun that we just started learning and incorporating. We had a wonderful facilitator here, Ceci Pineda, who was teaching us about microorganismos de la montaña, or indigenous microorganisms, wild microorganisms. So what I love about this soil practice is that it collaborates with the forest. So you go into the woods, you collect forest debris from the forest floor that is rich in fungal hyphae, mycorrhizal fungi, rich in beneficial bacteria. You make a fun mixture with some bulgur wheat and molasses, and then you let those beneficial organisms grow and colonize the medium, and then dilute that as a fertilizer and a foliar spray. So this is wonderful because, Dr. George Washington Carver, our ancestor who helped come up with regenerative agriculture and is a Black agronomist out of Tuskegee, right at the turn of the last century, he was really saying that we measure our success as farmers by how alive our soil is. And so to literally put extra life in our soil is a big piece, right? So of course, we also do the other things. We do compost, we do cover crop, we do mulches, we do crop rotation. We test our soil every year. If we need to add limestone, we add it. Like, all of those things are very, very important. We graze our livestock. But what feels like the additional piece that sometimes is forgotten when we only look at the chemistry is the fact that soil is alive. And so how do we inoculate our soils with the life from the forest so it continues to be part of that ecosystem?
Yeah, that's amazing. I have never heard of that. That sounds spectacular.
And it's so
I love
fun. You
it.
get to like
Yes.
mush the molasses between your hands and mix everything together. It smells good. It's like mud pies for adults.
It's amazing. And then have you felt like you've seen benefits?
Absolutely. Ever since we've started doing effective microbes on our trees, they have just been a lot healthier, more disease resistant, and we've had higher fruit yields. So it's definitely, as a foliar spray for trees, hands down. Of course, many factors change from year to year on a farm. So you could be like, well, is it because it was warmer or cooler? I don't know. But it seems to be on an upward trajectory. And there are scientific studies that show that it helps.
That's amazing. I mean, I think it's always great to be able to incorporate like firm, hard science. Like I'm a firm believer in that. But then I also feel like with farming, a lot of it is like a spiritual aspect as well, where you have to just be spiritually open and aware and connected and be open to trying new and different things. And not everything has to be like so. So that's great. And especially as you're thinking about like with the climate mitigation and the warmer weather and the really high aggressive pests that we're all seeing across
Exactly.
the spectrum. We all have to use every single strategy out there to help our plants and to help our soil. Well, that's amazing. That's a great story. And then I love the chapter about keeping seed and the power of a seed. And so I'm getting into more native crops because I'm in Ohio, and I feel as if it just connects me more to my own cultural experiences that I've had and my own food culture and my way of thinking. And so I really love the native crops because it really allows me to access a different part of myself. And so part of that is keeping seeds year through year and also growing native plants. How have you seen seed keeping in your practice of farming?
So this is so timely because this is the season of seed keeping, right? So we grow 7 varieties of seed to share through True Love. So we do 2 kinds of dry beans, including black-eyed pea pretzel. We do calendula. We do a Haitian tomato and the Moyamensing tomato, which are both Black heritage crops. And we do bee-balm and amaranth or tete. So these crops we grow and save for seed, and actually just posted, if folks want to check out the how-to on our Instagram, we just posted a reel for how you do a couple of those crops. And it's been so empowering because I think as a farmer for years, I thought that I just wasn't capable of seed keeping. That wasn't for me. And it was actually Mama Ira Wallace of Southern Exposure Seeds, who's a Black elder seed keeper, and Owen Taylor and Chris Bolden Newsom from True Love that encouraged us and came up and actually taught our community how to keep seeds and our duty to keep seeds, our duty to keep our varieties alive. And since then, it's become one of the most joyful parts of farming and also, honestly, the most lucrative. I know that this podcast talks a lot about the business aspect of things, but for relatively little effort, tomato seed alone, I think we probably brought in around $6,000 just of tomato seed. That's just one of the crops, and maybe spent, I don't know, 20 hours on it out of the course of the season. So if you look at the investment versus return ratio, just from an economic standpoint, it's worth noting that, you can earn a lot more on seeds than you can just selling the tomato as it is.
Absolutely. I love that. Diversifying the revenue streams.
Exactly.
It's all about that. Yeah, I love that. I was giving a talk at the Black Farming Network in Ohio, and we were talking about seed sovereignty, native plants. And one person said to me, they're like, I buy seeds, but then I don't always get the true type of seed in each packet. Sometimes I get a couple off seeds. And so I think what I said, and I want to ask you as well, because you're an expert as well. I was like, I think it's important to really make sure you're buying from like a localized seed company that is maybe in your region or that and that's really taking the extra steps and time. And so have you found that with True Love, your partnership with True Love Seeds, that they're taking that extra step in time?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. True Love does really high quality work. Southern Exposure does high quality work. And then in our region, there's Fedco, which is a co-op in Maine, and their seeds are outstanding and their ethos is outstanding. So yeah, we tend to, whenever possible, purchase from these locally controlled, values aligned companies, and not just because they're ethics aligned, but because they produce, good quality products and they stand behind their products.
Absolutely. Earlier in the podcast, we have driftless seeds. So they're out of Wisconsin. And then during the talk, I talked about Meadowlark Hearth, which is in Nebraska, and it's also a seed company. And so it's exactly like you're saying, they have the attention to detail and they're within your region and they have the same work ethic and values, and it makes a difference for sure. So now we're going to move on to in the last little bit of our segment, Black Earth Wisdom, your fabulous book. And I loved that you started the book with Roots Run Deep. And you gave the whole history of people of color farming. And I just love that. It touched my soul. It uplifted me. It made me feel really good about myself. And it gave me a really good history. Like, this is a long standing, centuries and centuries of information that we can all access and is available for us. And then it gave me impetus to think about, I can research these civilizations, these communities, these land practices more and expand the knowledge. So could you tell me why you started off the book in that way?
Absolutely. So something that inspired Black Earth Wisdom in the first place was, as I was writing Farming While Black, it was the how. And realizing in the time of pandemic, when folks were in an existential moment, we needed to understand our deeper why. And going back to Dr. George Washington Carver, he, as the father of modern regenerative ag, he had thousands of patents. He had figured out so many agricultural technologies. He had figured out how smallholders could heal their soil and have a successful business. But when he was asked by Glenn Clark where he got all his ideas from, I mean, this is a man who Albert Einstein called a genius. Where'd you get all these ideas? He said, I went out into the forest in the pre-dawn hours to listen to the voice of God through the trees. Nature is God's unlimited broadcasting system through which he speaks to me every minute, every hour, every day if I tune into the right channel, right?
Yes.
So here's someone who's listening to the earth, listening to nature, listening to the divine in nature to inform his science. And that really struck me. And so I became curious whether this could be generalized, whether Black people's connection to farming, to the earth, had this spiritual component, had this earth listening component. And as soon as I scratched the surface, interviewing folks and diving into the literature, it became really clear that it wasn't just Dr. Carver. This goes back thousands of years. This type of earth listening, this spiritual connection to the earth. And for folks who are familiar with Black traditional communities, you know that we often start our gatherings by honoring the ancestors. We pour libation, we call the names of our ancestors, right? And so what more appropriate way to start the book than to have essentially a libation, a mojuba, a homage to the ancestors in the ecological space, and named as many as the publisher would let me fit in my word count, and so that we can recognize again that we're not making something up. We're not starting something new.
Yeah.
We're building on a legacy and we're supported in that legacy.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think, as people of color, we've always had such a connection to the land. And then a lot of our ancestors migrated from the South to other regions of the country. And so sometimes I think at least in the Midwest, I can say there's more of a disconnect between our land knowledge and our land appreciation because we've been away from it for so long and we haven't had the access points back to farming. And so to know that this is just so long of our history, it's just a part of who we are, and that we can just reconnect at any moment and get in touch again. I love that idea. So that was very, very uplifting to my spirit and soul. And then you also talked about the soil again. Can you talk about why you decided to talk about soil again? Did you feel it was foundational to the work that you do every day?
Absolutely. I mean, the soil is foundational to everything. And something that really struck me is when I was talking to Mama Savvy Horn, who is a lawyer with the Land Loss Prevention Project. She explained something I didn't know, which was that during the time of slavery and emancipation, even after enslaved people were free, that some of them would leave the plantation and feel such yearning for a particular grove of trees or a particular plot of land that they would go back to share crop in that land. So compelling was that connection. And that was really stirring, troubling, interesting to me to think about this connection and this yearning overriding many of the harms and difficulties associated with those memories, with that relationship, with that particular family that called themselves master, right? And so that just got me very, very curious. In a similar way, during emancipation, when the freed people of Falls Church, Virginia got together to talk to the Freedmen's Bureau about what they need. They said, what we need are homes and the ground beneath them so that we may plant fruit trees concerning which our children can say these are ours. So this yearning for like soil, it's not just the chemistry, again, of the soil. There also is this cultural and spiritual aspect of belonging that needed to be elucidated when we think about not just the how, but also the why.
Absolutely. And I feel like sometimes, especially in our culture, everyone doesn't get access to the soil and to touching soil and to planting a seed and seeing the seed grow. And I know personally for myself, every time I get into the land, get into the soil, I come out a better person. I go in straggly and I come out renewed, no matter what's going on in my life. And so it's really imperative, I think, for more people to have access to land and to that sort of spiritual experience and the experience of renewal that can happen. And like you're saying, it happens directly with the soil. It's very foundational. And then the last chapter that we're going to talk about is hope is a seed. And I love that. I love that idea of the hope, because I think we're all now realizing we need hope and we need joy and we need encouragement and resiliency and interesting things going on in our lives. And I love the connection with hope and a seed coming together. Could you talk about that chapter?
I will. So something I've never told anyone. So that actually, Hope is a Seed. The name of the chapter comes from a piece of artwork I made when I was 12 years old in my middle school art class.
I love that.
It said, hope is a seed and I will believe. But of course, it's resonant beyond that. When I first learned from Judith Carney's research about the oral histories related to our ancestral grandmothers hiding seeds in their hair during the times of capture and slavery and maroonage, I was very much inspired by this idea of, in the face of the impossible, in the face of such an onslaught of violence and uncertainty, to save a seed is the ultimate gesture of hope and possibility. Because if you have a seed, it means that there's land. It means there's time to tend the seed. It means you're going to be there to harvest, and I was just so moved by the actuality of that and the metaphor of that. And so I often hold on to, in times of despair, this idea of our ancestors keeping their seeds against odds, and kind of like, who am I to give up? Who am I to let that seed die if they went through so much to make sure that seed got to me?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, I think our people have gone through a lot of challenging times. I mean, even if I think about my grandparents and their journey, my great grandparents and their journey from Milledgeville, Georgia, up to Akron, Ohio, and just having to leave suddenly and leave their land and move to Akron, a city where, they didn't have a lot of connections and they didn't have access to land, and to start off a new career with their kids. And so it's a lot of adversity and travail that they had to go through. But I'm thankful that they did, because now I'm here.
Now you are here. Fourth generation. That's incredible.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah, I agree with you. There is that hope, and then you have to plan for the future and implement it and be ready for harvest. And yeah, it's exciting. And so I love that idea of having that hope and having that joy in a seed. There's so many varieties of seeds that you can choose from, so many things that you can grow. It's just amazing. It's very amazing. So finally, did you have any projects that you'd like to highlight, or anything you have upcoming at Soulfire?
So always a bustle at Soulfire. It's the fall, and so our remaining programming, we have some tours and community work and learn days left, as well as a mushroom workshop That's right around the corner. And then during the winter time is a time more of public speaking and writing and policy work. And then when spring comes around again, the full programming calendar is open. So we have our week-long training programs, we have day-long workshops, we have so much. So folks should definitely check us out and subscribe at soulfirefarm.org to the newsletter so that you're the first to know when registration's open for these programs. And we're excited to see folks on the land in the coming months.
Well, Leah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
It's been a
April.
very impactful conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, and I'd love to highlight again your book, Farming While Black, and Black Earth Wisdom, Soulful Conversations with Black Environmentalists. They are both excellent, excellent reads for anybody who's in sustainability, thinking about getting into sustainability, or loves someone in sustainability or beyond. Excellent, 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 outstanding work.
Oh, thanks,
And thank you
April.
again
You're
so
so
much.
kind. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Growing for Market podcast. If you've been enjoying the show, please consider giving us a follow and a rating or review. It really helps others to find the podcast. For more tips and tricks from farmer to farmer, check out our magazine at growingformarket.com. Whether you're a commercial grower or just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market magazine for the nitty-gritty of growing, marketing, and the business of market farming. We publish 10 issues per year with articles written by experienced farmers on topics ranging from tools and techniques to farm business, operations, and marketing. If you've been listening to the Growing for Market podcast and haven't yet checked out Growing for Market magazine, we've made a change so you can try the magazine for free. We've added a free month to the beginning of all first-time subscriptions. Try out the digital or paper magazine, and if it's not for you, cancel within 28 days, and you'll never get billed. With digital subscriptions starting at just $39 per year, you'll get a year of the magazine plus 150 back issues from the last 15 years. Head over to Growing for Market and subscribe today to benefit from over 3 decades of writing by farmers for farmers and Growing for Market magazine.